Be a lot because everybody. What's up, everybody? Peace and light, peace and light. I hope everybody having a good night. Let me go ahead and put a different background up here. And peace and light, everybody in YouTube world. So TikTok, I was trying to stream from over here on TikTok, but it wasn't working for me. So I went ahead and started on YouTube because I wanted to show you all some information. I had pulled it all up so we can get ready for the night stream. But for whatever reason, the stream over here on TikTok not working when it let me do it from my computer. So we still gonna go ahead and do the live episode tonight. But if you want to see, actually, you can go over to YouTube, Imhotep the Great. I'm gonna let some more people get up in here. Let me put this background because this light is kind of bright. Right here, this light is a little bright. Let's do this one. Peace, 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 everybody. So yeah, I was supposed to come on at 9, but I tried to come on earlier because I'm trying to live stream from my computer so I can show y'all. We was diving into the book before Florida, the Inca. Peace and light, Meta. Peace and light, everybody come into the chat. But since it won't allow me to do that, it's still skipping right now. But since it won't allow me to do that, what we going to do, I'm live on YouTube. I got the information put up on YouTube, Imhotep the Great. So if anybody want to go over to YouTube, because we got a book we going to dive into tonight. So I'm going to let people for the next 10 or 15 minutes to come in and we can chop it up. But we live on YouTube right now. So pull up Imhotep the Great over on YouTube. And then I can show you all we talking about so we ain't got to keep holding the phone and doing all this stuff. And I tried to do it from TikTok, but for whatever reason, TikTok Live wouldn't let me. It was just acting crazy on the computer. So again, y'all go over to Imhotep the Great YouTube page. So Imhotep the Great on YouTube. If you get in there, hit the number 1, or just say yo if you go over there. Because we got everything pulled up right now. I'm going to give it about 10 minutes to get everybody over there. Ozzy is not about thinking I'm Indian. It's knowing that I'm indigenous. It's not about thinking. I know we're indigenous to the Americas. And we're going to prove that more and more tonight. That's what we're going to talk about, Ozzy. You know, not about a belief. We're not in a time of belief. We're in a time of knowing. Let me see here. It's not a time of belief. It's a time of knowing. Facts. Peace and light. I want to give a shout out to all my American Indian people, all my so-called Black American people, all the people throughout the Americas. Okay, it's working now. Y'all do me a favor. If y'all can go over to YouTube, y'all go over to YouTube. If I get about 5 people over to YouTube, we're going to go ahead and roll it on YouTube too. Because I got the stuff pulled up on YouTube that we're going to talk about tonight. For whatever reason, again, TikTok not working on my computer. So when I tried to go live on the computer, TikTok wasn't working on the computer. So we're going to go ahead and do a live over on YouTube. That makes sense? And if you don't catch it on YouTube, I'm going to keep it up on YouTube so we can go ahead and just, build off that, what we talk about. Let me make sure. You know. So again, everybody, we finna be live on YouTube. So I'm basically coming over here telling everybody go over to YouTube. I just need about 3 or 4 people over on the tube. But I'll let y'all know what it is, and then y'all check it out. But I'm gonna go ahead and get started over on YouTube again. Tonight, I'm gonna show y'all a little bit while we going over it. So let me flip it around. I'm gonna hold it for y'all. Anybody over here, y'all gonna get the player thing. Let me flip it around. Try my best to hold it, but again, we on YouTube again with it. All right. So tonight we getting into the book. We already kind of talked about this book some. This is the book we're gonna be going over right now. We're gonna be diving into this book. It's called The Florida of the Inca. Florida of the Inca. Let's record this too. Florida of the Inca. That's the book we're gonna be getting into tonight. Florida of the Inca. And as I always tell y'all, when we're talking about Florida, we're just not talking to. Remember, anybody know? Let me see anybody in the comments who know what it is. When we say Florida, yes or no? Are we just saying the state of Florida, or do we mean an area? So when y'all see Florida, anytime we talking about Florida in ancient antiquity, we really talking about this whole area right here. All of this is what we talking about. We talking about Florida. Area. Thank you, Matriarch. We talking about the whole area of Florida. So when we get into this book, again, the Florida of the Inca, not just this little peninsula right here, what they call Florida. We're not talking about this peninsula. At one time, they called this all Florida. So when you hear brothers and sisters on the app and you hear them saying that, hey, at one time, almost the whole Southeast, even more than the Southeast, up to New York, was called Florida. Exactly. Venus, you're right. Spanish Florida. They might even call it La Florida or La Florida. But the whole Southeast, even going over to Texas, y'all see this? This is Texas right here. Oh, that's Texas. Past the Mississippi River, they called all of this Florida. So when we get into this book, Florida the Inca, keep that in mind. Keep that in mind that you're talking about Florida. When we say Florida, we're not talking about this little panhandle right here. We're talking about the United States, almost the whole eastern United States we're talking about. Because some reports talk about all the way up as far as the Great Lakes they call Florida. Up to the Chesapeake Bay they call Florida. So you got to look at what time period and what writer is writing about this time period. But we're going to get into this book, which we already kind of got into it before. But what I wanted to do, I wanted to make sure we go over and record it. You get what I'm saying? I recorded off the phone, but we're recording it right now. It's going to be on YouTube. So if you want to watch it later at a later date, what we're going to go over today, you definitely can check it out on YouTube. Shout out to all my people on YouTube. I don't know if anybody on YouTube right now who may be with me. Let me come on camera on YouTube real quick because show y'all some love. Let me show y'all some love real quick, YouTube. If y'all with me, I want to say peace and light to everybody on YouTube. I've been neglecting y'all, so you know, we here now. So we gonna go on here and we got this video gonna be rocking for the YouTube page. So again, we're going into the book Florida of the Inca, as y'all can see right here on the background. That's what we're gonna be talking about, Florida of the Inca. I know y'all can see it. TikTok, y'all spoiled. I'm holding my phone for y'all because y'all spoiled. So hold the phone to a certain degree. But right now, again, it's live right now on YouTube. If you want to watch it there too, if you want to watch it at a later date, it's going to be on YouTube. But we're going to go ahead and roll. All right, so again, when we're talking about Florida, we talk about a mass geographical area. Again, I love this map right here. They always say, oh, it's a Dutch map. But let's look at it in color. You're still going to see even the depictions of dark-skinned brown people when you're talking about this Dutch map. You're going to see a depiction of dark-skinned, melanated people on a map of America. Let's go back right here. You see these dark? Now, the people who call themselves indigenous or Native Americans, they are not depicted like this. Nowhere you don't find any artifacts, anything. So you know, as we do genealogy, as we study about the Mississippi Kingdom, what we identify as Tamiri, and as we study as just studying this continent, you're going to see all the history of this continent far back to us. So that's why it's important for us to start diving into and understanding, when did they get to this part of the Americas? When did they get to this part of the Americas that you call today the United States, that they are calling Florida? And one of the greatest conquerors is going to be De Soto. So when we going through this particular book, we talking about the story of De Soto. Hernando de Soto. And it's also going to tell about some more conquerors who came prior. Now, again, anybody, we went through this about 2 weeks ago. But we only got through a couple chapters. So we're going to start over. It's being recorded. So y'all will be able to check it out as well. So I'm going to sit the phone up here and I'm going to read it to y'all. Okay, y'all learned about him in school. Okay, he is somebody very important that everybody definitely want to be able to check out and understand, because he's one of the first conquistadors. Anybody know a conquistador basically is a conqueror. So he is one of the first conquerors or colonizers of the Americas. We got to understand, when they got here, they were sending conquerors over here. It wasn't a discovery thing. That's a fairy tale. It sounds better to say, oh, let me flip it right here. It sounds better to say, oh, well, yeah, we discovered America. Peace and light, hidden gem. It sounds better to say we discovered America versus saying we conquered America, fought the people for 400 years. After 100 years after we finally won, we reclassified, denationalized them and reclassified them to Negroes, blacks, and coloreds. See, I discovered America and then I brought African slaves. That's a jackpot. And I gave some Native Americans casinos to pacify them from a landmass. Y'all see how that work? Gotta wake up. So yeah, that's a fairy tale thing. This whole thing, so that they tell you, oh, he discovered. So Hernando de Soto is one of the greatest colonizers on the planet. Let's be clear about that. He's one of the greatest colonizers. Put this back up so I can talk to y'all too on YouTube. Get this for you. Let me make sure here. All right. So yeah. Okay. Peace and light, family. Peace and light, family. I appreciate you, Meta. We finna go ahead and get it started over here. So again, family, anybody want to go over to YouTube? We live on YouTube right now. So you can go over there as well. I appreciate it. I appreciate you, family. Thank you for getting it out. So we're going to go ahead and I'm going to roll it on YouTube. So I appreciate it. As they come in, just let them know to come on YouTube. And I'm just going to keep rolling it out. All right. So again, the Conquistadors, this book we dived into is about Hernando de Soto. And this is the Florida of the Inca is also called Conquest of Florida. But the book is also called Florida of the Inca. Catch that. Florida of the Inca. So you see the name here? So we're going to go ahead and dive into it because we read some of it already and we're going to hop back into it. Now, before we hop into it, I do also want to show y'all these maps about Florida. Just showing y'all again that when we talking about Florida, we talking about a great landmass. So Florida was not just this state of Florida, what they call today. Again, we had almost the whole southeast going all the way up into what they call the Chesapeake Bay or the Great Lakes. That was called Florida. So all this whole thing was called Florida at one time. So you see how over here on the map is going all the way again, just like this map right here. It's showing you going all the way past Texas. That was all called Florida. All the way past Texas on this map again. All called Texas. All called Florida. All right. So here we go right here. So we're going to start again. The name of the book is called The History Hernando de Soto in Florida. Record of the events of 56 years, 1512 to 1568, by Bernard Ship. Philadelphia, 1881. And we're going to start with the first chapter. Again, we kind of went over this stuff already, the first couple chapters, but we're going to go into about chapter 10 on this one. And we're going to stop when we see something significant on it. We're going to stop. I'm going to let y'all know what it's saying. So again, the name of the book is History of the Conquest of Florida. Chapter 1, Design of the Author. I designed the right of the discovery of Florida and the memorable deeds that have been done there. But as Hernando de Soto performed great actions there, and as this relation particularly concerns him, I should commence his history from the beginning. Soto was one of 12 conquerors of Peru and participated in the capture of Atahualpa, who was the last king of Peru. The prince was the natural son of the Inca, Hana Capac, and had usurped the kingdom from the legitimate heir, who was called Huáscar. But the cruelties of the usurper caused the people to revolt against him, which facilitated to the Spaniards the conquest of Peru, and procured them great riches. The fifth alone for the emperor amounted to nearly 2,300,000 ducats, and Hernando de Soto had more than 100,000. So it's telling you Hernando de Soto became rich before he even got to the United States, or what we call North America. Hernando de Soto had conquered Peru. And he had conquered a king called Atapa. All right, let's finish. This captain received, besides that, many presents from the Indians and from Atapa himself, who gave him magnificent ones. Because he was the first Spanish to whom he had spoken. Let me read that again, y'all. Let's get it together. The fifth alone for the emperor amounted to nearly 2,300,000 ducats, and Hernando de Soto had more than 100,000. This captain received, besides that, many presents from the Indians, and Atapa himself, who gave him magnificent ones, because he was the first Spaniard who the people had spoken with. When Soto had thus enriched himself, he returned to Spain with several others, who all had made fortunes at Casamarca. But instead of thinking of the acquisition of some great estate in his own country, the remembrance of his glorious deeds which he had achieved inspired him with a vast design. Therefore, De Soto, that's what we're talking about, went to Valladolid to solicit Charles V to permit him to undertake the conquest of Florida. So, y'all, we're getting started already. De Soto, after he had conquered Peru, he went to Charles V to permit him to undertake the conquest of Florida. So right there, y'all see, it was not a discovery of Florida. It was a conquest. They was already conquered. They had this, Christopher Columbus had discovered the Caribbean islands, and they was taking it a step forward further. And then now they were going to the mainland, what they call United States, again, Florida. So again, therefore he went to Valladolid to solicit Charles V to permit him to undertake the conquest of Florida and engaged to do it at his own expense. and to do everything from the glory of the empire. What most prompted him to this illustrious enterprise was seeing that he had conquered nothing in his own right. Hernando Cortez had conquered Mexico, and Pizarro and Almagro Peru, for not inferior to them, neither in valor or in other quality, he could not endure that fortune should be more propitious to them to himself. So he wanted to go ahead and conquer the mainland Florida because Hernando de Soto had already conquered Mexico and Almagro and Pizarro had already conquered Peru. So we talking about Hernando de Soto, everybody who just coming in. He therefore renounced all his claims upon Peru and turned all his thoughts upon the conquest of Florida, where he died. It is thus that great commanders have sacrificed themselves for the interests of their sovereigns. Nonetheless, there are among us persons who maliciously say that Spain owes to the rashness of some young fools the greater part of the countries of the New World. But they do not reflect that they themselves are the children of Spain, and that the generous mother has not raised those to whom she had given birth to, but to conquer America, and to carry the terror of their arms into the rest of the earth. Let's read that last part again. So this is what Spain was coming to do. Not discover again. Nevertheless, there are among us persons who maliciously say that Spain owes to the rashness of some young fools. Some young fools. Some people would say, oh, Spain just discovered America. That Spain owes the rashness to just some young fools who just discovered America, the greater part of the countries of the New World. But they do not reflect that them themselves are children of Spain, and that this generous mother had not raised those to whom she had given birth. She gave birth for them to conquer America and to carry the terror of their arms into the rest of the world. Chapter 2. The bounds of Florida. Florida is so called because it was discovered on Palm Sunday, the 27th of March, the year of 1513. But because it is a great country in which all parts are neither conquered nor known. So nobody had never conquered this. In 1513, when they got to North America, nobody had never conquered this part of North America. Again, because it is a great country in which all parts are neither conquered nor known, it is difficult to describe them accurately. It is not known, in fact, whether Florida is bounded on the north by the sea or by land. What is certain is that it has the Gulf of Mexico and island of Cuba to the south, to the east the ocean which faces Africa, and to the west what is now called New Mexico. In this direction is the province of the seven towns. Remember the seven cities of gold? Did y'all ever heard that? That's what he's talking about. Which was so called by Vasquez Coronado, who went in 1539 to discover those regions. But as they could not settle them, Antonio de Mendoza, who had sent them there, lost with regret all he had expended in this enterprise. Chapter 3. Those who have attempted the conquest of Florida. Juan Ponce de Leon was the first who discovered Florida. He was a gentleman, born in the kingdom of Leon, and had been governor of the island of Puerto Rico. As the Spaniards then thought only of making new discoveries, he equipped 2 caravels and endeavored by every means to discover the island of Bimini, on account of the report that there was a fountain which restored youth to old men. Hit the number 1 if y'all heard what I said. They came over here looking because they thought it was a fountain of youth over here. Peace and light, TB. Peace and light, family. Everybody coming into the chat. Peace and light, everybody on YouTube. We on YouTube as well, so if y'all want to see what I'm reading, it's over on YouTube. I tried to hook it up to my computer over here on TikTok. It wasn't working, so we just going to rock it over on YouTube. So we on live on YouTube too, people. You see? All right, so let me get back right there. Where we at? So we going to say that again for y'all. As the Spaniards then thought only making new discoveries, he equipped 2 caravels and endeavored by every means to discover the island of Bimini, on account of the report that there were a fountain which restored youth to old men. So they were coming to America to look for the fountain of youth and other riches. So they were coming to conquer America. Let's be clear there. They were coming to conquer America. But after having searched in vain for this island, a tempest eased him upon the coast which is opposite the north of Cuba. And he named this continent Florida. Remember? When we said Florida, they calling this all of North America. Look at the cover of this book. It says the fabulous De Soto story, the Florida of the Inca. On this map right here, bring that map back up. At the top, you see where it say right here, Florida, the great country of North America, 1539. So showing you that they came to conquer Florida. And Florida, again, was just not that little state. So it said he named this whole continent Florida. He didn't name this area Florida, that little state what we got today, Florida. He named the whole continent Florida. And again, as I'm showing you on this map, we cooperating what the book is telling you, that the whole continent, it was called the great country of North America, Florida. Y'all see that right there? The great country of North America, Florida. The great country of North America. All right, let's get back into the book. And again, anybody want to see what we're reading? Imhotep the Great on YouTube. All right, let's get back. So he said he was looking for this was Juan Ponce de Leon. So this chapter 3 we in, they talking about those who have attempted the conquest of Florida. Remember, this book is about Hernando de Soto. But it started in chapter 3. We went through 1 and 2, chapter 3. Those who attempted the conquest of Florida. So Juan Ponce de Leon, right here, was the first one who came looking for the fountain of youth. So let's finish reading. We're reading about Juan Ponce de Leon. Okay, so let's get back right here. And he named this continent Florida. And without considering whether it was an island or the mainland, he proceeded to Spain to ask permission to conquer it. Again, Juan Ponce de Leon asked Spain for permission to conquer it. And he obtained it. Wherefore, in the year 1513, he equipped 3 vessels and landed in the country which he had discovered. Florida. Again, Florida is the whole southeast. 1513, he landed in what he had discovered. And the king of Spain gave him kingdom to come over here and conquer our homeland. We talking about the whole southeast United States. Get out this out of Africa theory. This is when it started going down. We started with Juan Ponce de Leon. Wherefore, in the year 1513, he equipped 3 vessels and landed in the country which he had discovered. The Indians, on his arrival, forcefully repulsed him. So the Indians pushed him back when he touched down and slew nearly all his people, except 7 wounded, of which he was. Let me read that again. The Indians, on his arrival, forcibly repulsed him and slew nearly all his people, except 7 wounded, which number he was, which he was included in those 7 wounded. Juan Ponce de Leon rode up on Florida, and the Indians slew all their men. So 1513, these melanated copper-colored people slew all these people in 1513. When Juan Ponce de Leon, the first bitch ran up, got done up. Excuse my language to any of my elders. Y'all watch rated R movies. Okay, let's finish going. So, again, the Indians on his arrival forcibly repulsed him and slew nearly all his people except 7 wounded, of which number he was, who fled to Cuba, which they all died from their wounds. Such was the end of Ponce and his expedition. So, let's clear that up, sum it up. Juan Ponce de Leon came in 1513. He got conquest from Spain, so he got the go-ahead from Spain. He ran up on Florida. He got done up. We sent them back to Cuba, and he was wounded when he got sent back to Cuba. Let's finish. But after him, it seemed that all attempts upon Florida, the United States, continue to be fatal to those who made them. Some years after this misfortune, the pilot Mervello, who commanded a caravel going to traffic with the savages, talking about coming to Florida, a storm drove him upon the coast of Florida, where he was so favorably received that he returned very well pleased to the island of San Domingo. So when Morello came, he was received well by the Indians. But he did not profit by this opportunity like a wise pilot, for he had not precaution to take the latitude of the places, and this neglect cost him dearly, as will be seen. So a pilot named Morello got washed on the sea. He reported it back to the island of San Domingo, but since he didn't do the coordination where he was at, he didn't know how to get back. So he didn't capitalize off that opportunity to try to conquer this land. Let's finish. At the same time, 7 of the richest men of St. Domingo formed a company and sent 2 vessels to the island of Florida in order to bring from them Indians to work in the mines which they possessed in common. Hit the number 2 if you just heard what I said. Did they go to Africa to get people to work in the Caribbean? This is in the 1500s. Were they going to Africa to get people to work in the Caribbean? Listen what these people said that the Spanish conquistadors were going to get slaves from. Let me say it again for the people in the back. At the same time, 7 of the richest men of San Domingo formed a company and sent 2 vessels to the island of Florida in order to bring from them Indians to work in the mines which they possessed in common. So they were taking Indians from the mainland. They were coming to Florida for the intention to get Indians. We talked about this months ago, people, about how they were coming to the mainland to get indigenous people and taking them to work in the mines of Mexico. So we talked about this months ago. But this is another book that is reconfirming that for you. So they're not going to Africa to get slaves. They're going to Florida, the United States, what we call the United States. Remember, Florida was the whole Southeast to get slaves to work at mines in the Caribbean. So we're telling you, when people say the slave trade was told in reverse, this is what they mean. These vessels landed at the Cape, which was named St. Helena, because they were arrived on the anniversary of that saint. Let's see what this is. Let's look on the map. We're going to break it down while we're reading this book, everybody. So, St. Helena, Florida. Let's see, can we find it? Okay, so St. Helena was a Spanish fort. Let's look on the map. Is the map going to show us what St. Helena is at in Florida? Okay, so we can know. Okay, so that's an inland. It's probably somewhere on the outer lands. But they arrived at St. Helena when they was coming to get slaves to work at mines in Mexico. Remember that. They were getting the slaves from the mainland. All right, so again, these vessels landed at a cape which was named St. Helena because they arrived there on the anniversary of that saint. They passed thence to a river which they called the Jordan, from the name of him who discovered it. The Spaniards landed at this place, and the inhabitants of the country, who had not yet seen ships, were led to consider them as supernatural things. They were also astonished at the fashion of the attire of the strangers, and at seeing them with beards. But that did not prevent them from receiving them kindly. For they gave them marten skins, some silver, and some seed pearls. The Spaniards made them presents in return and induced them by their caresses to visit the vessels. So listen to this. So the Indians was kind to the Spanish when they got to the mainland Florida. They were giving them, they said, marten skins, some silver. They gave them some seed pearls. The Spaniard made them presents in return and induced them by their caresses, by being kind. The Spanish was being kind back. Told them, hey, come visit the ship. Listen to this next. The Indians who trusted to these appearances of friendship, so the Indians thinking they being friendly, to the number of 130, entered the ships. What was the Spanish coming to get again? Oh, thank you, Gamble. I'm glad y'all with me. Listen to them. The Indians who trusted to these appearances of friendship, to those of 130, entered the ships. Our people immediately weighed anchor. When he say our people, he talking about the Spanish. Our people, aka the Spanish, immediately weighed anchor, and with went with all sail to St. Domingo. So they went to Florida, the mainland. Again, let me show you all the map right here, y'all on YouTube. They went to Florida to get the slaves, and they succeeded for slaves in the mining. They was being kind when they got there, and then they induced them on the ship, 130 of them, and they pulled off. So let's read about next. Again, the Indians who trusted to these appearances of friendship to the number of 130 entered the ships. Our people immediately weighed anchor and went with all sail to St. Domingo. But only one of the two vessels arrived at the port, and also they did not profit by their prize. These poor savages, in despair at being deceived, abandoned themselves to grief and starved themselves to death. I have another book that says the Indians would rather be unalived or take themselves out to be enslaved. That's where they get that Wakanda thing from. Y'all pay attention and wake up. But it tell you it's operating on another book we done talked about before. That these Indians starved themselves, unalived themselves. They starved themselves because they wasn't about to be nobody. SALAVES. So again, but only one of the two vessels arrived at the port and also did not profit by their prize. These poor savages, they saying the Indians, in despair having been deceived, abandoned themselves to grief and starved themselves to unalivement. This news having spread in St. Domingo, Vasquez Lucas de Leon went to Spain to ask for permission to conquer Chicory, one of the provinces of Florida. Again, remember, Chicory is South Carolina, a province of Florida. So again, when they say in Florida, at one time, Florida was the whole country. Pay attention to that. Florida was the whole country, going all the way over to New Mexico. Chicory was South Carolina, a province of Florida. And it tell you it was a province of Florida, but we have another book that's going to show you Chicory was South Carolina. Again, so Vasquez Lucas de Leon, another conquistador, he heard about them going over to the mainland, getting them 130 people for work at the mines in the Caribbean. He asked for permission to go conquer Chicory, again, one of the provinces of Florida. And he wanted to become the administration of the country which he should subdue. The emperor granted to him what he desired, so they gave him permission to go conquer Florida. Still, in addition to this favor, conferred upon him the order of San Diego. Eleanor's return to St. Domingo equipped 3 vessels in 1524 and took Mervello to conduct him to the land where this pilot had been, because it was believed to be the most fertile of all that had been discovered at that time. Can somebody tell me, just from reading this, let me read it again to you. Elian, on his return to St. Domingo, equipped 3 vessels in 1524 and took Mervello to conduct him to the land where this pilot had been, because it was believed to be the most fertile of all the land that had been discovered up to that time. Can y'all type in the chat for me what land, the name of the land, which was the most fertile of all the land they had discovered in the 1500s? Because remember, they had discovered Peru, they had discovered Mexico, they had discovered Africa. They was from Europe. They knew about Asia. What land had been the most discovered? What is the most fertile land of all that has been discovered? Exactly. And at this time, Mississippi was called Florida. So that's what they telling you. So Lucas de Leon, another conquistador, got permission to go conquest Florida in 1524. Because, again, he wanted to get it because he said this was the most fertile land that had been discovered up to the time. It's telling you right here in the book. But it says, but because Mervello, the person Lucas de Leon was bringing with him, no longer remembered the place where he had first landed, he tried in vain to reach it. And he was so sensible, affected by it, that he lost both his reason and his life. Elian did not cease to go on, and even after the admiral ship was lost in the Jordan, he continued his voyage with 2 remaining vessels and anchored near Chicory on a very pleasant coast, where at first he was very well received. Again, this alien, Lucas the alien, he being well received again. Let's finish reading. So that he imagined it would be very easy for him to conquer the country. So they being nice to him, but then his whole vision again is to come conquer the country. He in Shakori, South Carolina. He sent 200 men to reconnatriate. I think that means reconnect. The Indians who had concealed their evil designs. Remember, listen to this. Elian sent 200 men in. And it says the Indians who concealed their evil design, because remember the Indians was being nice, conducted them into the interior of the country, and after having manifested such friendship for them, they recalled the treachery of the other Spaniards to them and fell upon them and cut them in pieces. Listen to that again. Did y'all hear that? Can somebody put the scissors in the chat for me? I'm going to read it for y'all again. Let me read it again for y'all. So that he imagined it would be very easy for him to conquer the country, because he said the Indians were being nice to him. So that he imagined it would be very easy for him to conquer the country. He said 200 men to reconnatriate. The Indians who concealed their evil designs, the Indians who hid their plans, conducted them into the interior of the country, and after manifested much friendship for them. So the Indians was being so friendly to them, brought them into the interior. They remembered the treachery of the Spaniards to them, and fell upon them and cut them into pieces. Cut them into pieces. Then they came upon fury upon Elian and his comrades. So they found the captain Elian, who sent the 200 men in, who had remained upon the vessels. They slew and wounded many of them, and forced the rest of them to return quickly to St. Domingo. The most important of those who escaped were Elian and a gentleman of Badeos, by whom I had heard narrated the defeat which I just related. So Elian got his ass whooped and got sent back to St. Domingo. Let's see. Let me show y'all where St. Domingo is at. That is going to be, let's see. So we say St. Domingo, they got sent back to the Dominican Republic. They got sent back to the Dominican Republic. They got their ass spanked and got sent back to the Dominican Republic. Hold on, B. I'm going to put it like this.
I need to quit. I don't want to teach this no more. I like the way you teach it. I like the way you teach it. I'm serious, bro.
I appreciate that, fam. I like the way you get a spiel too. You know, you be cooking as well, so. But yeah.
Hey, so you reading the spiritual conquest of the Florida?
Yep, Florida, the Inca. Yep, history of the conquest of Florida.
Man, listen, I got like 7 more Florida books. You gotta get them. You gotta get them.
Oh yeah, send them to me, bro. We can build. You can come on live. We go through them. Sometimes you can hop in and I can hop in, and we can build the whole thing. Is knocking it out. Because what are we doing this for? Because we want the people to know we have actual history. It's a beautiful history here, and we got to know how this really happened when they got down here. One thing you always say, and I say it too, I love that we put this out like this. When you talk about an antebellum South, that's an illusion, people. It's an illusion. That doesn't exist. That's something they done programmed in your mind, that you believe that your people was in the antebellum South, and these people wasn't even here in the 1800s. They just started getting here late 1800s, 1900s. Even from the 1500s, it took them 400 years to really get on top of the Southeast. This was the last place in the Americas, the last stronghold. Everybody was running here too, or tribes from all over the world. Actually, people from all over the world.
That's definitely true.
So
we fought 13 countries with 7 strongholders, bro. Like 7 strongholds, 13 countries, 26 small sub-countries, bro. You go look at how many countries came through Ellis Island, Angel Island. Look at the Spanish history and the Portuguese history. You'll see that these folks brought people from everywhere, mainly Asians. But I want to stick to what you're talking about.
Fact.
You brought up St. Helena Island. And what people don't understand is St. Helena Island is the first capital of this country. The first colonial capital of this country. Meaning that them folks went to St. Helena and got people from the Gullah Geechee corridors, took them down to Mexico and Peru, got them folks to dig silver and gold and drove them folks right back up through the same area and used the Western Lie every season to travel through the Atlantic, because that's the only time of the year you can go through the Atlantic. Is during the time of the Western Lie. Or the Western Lies, or however it goes, but it's documented in everybody's history about this Western Lie thing. But the Spanish themselves, if you gonna talk Gullah Geechee history in America, you cannot talk it without mentioning the spiritual conquest of La Florida, because the main story of them people is based on the Gullah Geechee corridor.
Facts. And we talking about this.
Alabama. Mississippi all say, "Oh, we Geechee, we Geechee too," because if you don't know about the real history of the Spanish, then you won't know how a lot of y'all got Cherokee grandmamas. Yeah, because the Cherokees were dealing with the Spanish and the French, not the English. The English couldn't stand them people.
And another thing, understand this too, everybody. When we talking about this whole. We talking about the whole Southeast, even going all the way up. When we talking about Florida again, I got this map I'm showing y'all too over here. Anybody who on YT right now, or y'all want to see this later, it's gonna be up on YouTube too. This map we showing y'all right here to show you the Florida, the great country, not the great province. What we just read you in the book, Chicora was a province of Florida. So you got Florida, the great country of North America. So when we telling you St. Helena, the first capital, understand it was different provinces that was already here that they was coming to conquer. And another thing that TB telling y'all is a fact. Understand, just like the book just confirmed it. They came up here to get slaves, to work at the mines, not just in the Caribbean islands, but all throughout the Americas. So it wasn't going over to Africa to get the slaves. They were coming to the mainland North America to get slaves to work in the Caribbean islands. Why would you go to Africa and get slaves when you got melanated, dark-skinned people right in the land that you're conquering, on the mainland, millions of them? Doesn't make sense. You wouldn't even risk it back over the ocean 4 months to go do that. It's an illusion. So we're going to finish hopping back in this next part of the book. I'm going to read this last part again, just so we can understand where we left off at. Because this was real powerful what they saying, so let me say it again for y'all. All right. Elian did not cease to go on after, let me see, was that it? In 1524? Okay, yep, that's what it says. Elian did not cease to go on, and even after the admiralship was lost in the Jordan, he continued his voyage with 2 remaining vessels and anchored near Chicora. Again, Chicora is South Carolina. The Elian anchored near South Carolina, also known as Chicora, on a very pleasant coast. Y'all see how Myrtle Beach look? It looked just like Florida, on a very beautiful coast, where at first he was very well received. So the Indians received him very well at first. So that, as he imagined it, it would be very easy for him to conquer the country. So he imagined, I'm going to conquer this country real fast because they're receiving me well. He sent 200 men to conquer it. The Indians, who concealed their evil designs, so the Indians concealed their plans, conducted them to the interior of the country. So the Indians said, "Hey, come off the coast, come on in." They said, "Come on in, bro. Come on in." And they conducted him into the interior of the country after having manifested much friendship for them. And after having manifested much friendship for them, they recalled the treachery of the other Spaniards to them. So remember them other Spaniards who had came and had did horrible things? The Indians fell upon them and cut them into pieces. Then they came upon Furry, upon Elian and his comrades. Elian and them remained on the vessels. They slew and wounded many of them and forced the rest of them to return quickly to St. Domingo. The most important of those who escaped were Elian and a gentleman of Badajoz, by whom I had heard narrated the defeat which I just related. Again, this misfortune did not deter Pamphile de Narvaez. This is another conqueror. So we was talking about the alien got his ass whooped. Who else got his ass whooped? It was somebody else. We had the alien, Juan Ponce de Leon, the alien, Mervella. Now we on Narvaez. This in 1529. Remember, somebody just came in 1524. Now we got somebody else coming trying to run up on us again. 5 years later, 1529. Let's read it. This misfortune did not deter Pamphile de Narvaez. He went to Florida in 1529 and took with him the young Merverlo. So Merverlo coming again. Merverlo went with Lucas de Elian. Now he coming with Pamphile de Narvaez in 1529. The nephew of him who I had spoken, but thought he had some knowledge of the country, having been instructed by his uncle. He was not, however, more fortunate than he. Damn, let me read that again. This misfortune did not deter Pamphile de Narvaez. He went to Florida in 1529 and took with him the young Mervello, the nephew of him of whom I have spoken. But though he had some knowledge of the country, having been instructed by his uncle, he was not, however, more fortunate than he. Narvaez himself in this voyage perished with his people, excepting Albert Nunez, Vaca de Vaca, and 4 of his companions who returned to Spain, where they attained some public offices. But this did not succeed, for they died very miserably, and Albert returned a prisoner to Valladolid, where he ended his days. After those of whom I have just spoken, Hernando de Soto undertook to invade Florida. So the dude Narvaez, basically, he perished. He ran up. He got done up. It didn't work for him either. So they said the next person coming is Hernando de Soto. He came to invade Florida. He arrived there in 1539. That's almost, 500 years ago, people. This is important because they always trying to start you with the English history. Hernando de Soto got here in 1539, 500 years ago. See why it's significant why they started you in English history. And they say, oh, focus on Jamestown. Jamestown in 1620, that's almost 100 years later.
See, the reason why they want you focused on Jamestown, because they don't want you to really learn the story of Don Lewis. And see, that's another part of the Gullah Geechee story of them taking Indians out of the Chesapeake Bay down into Mexico to dig mines and make babies, and then bringing them young Indians back. These were 15 and 13, 12 and 9-year-old people that they was abducting out of these lands, off these coastal, like kids at the coastal areas around the beaches playing. They pulling up in their ships, and they coming with treats and all this other stuff. So the kids is getting on these boats, these young teenagers, and by the time the adults get down there,
they gone.
So,
Trafficking.
when folks come back in and they trying to be friendly, the adults is like, what happened to our women and children? Bet on that. And so, it started going down. Hey, look, I want you to host me up, right? Because while you keep bringing up these names, these people need to be able to see it.
Oh,
Like,
yep. I'll put you on a. Give me something. Let me get you up here real quick, bro.
Like, y'all see Jara, right? Y'all see Coosa and y'all see Guale. That word Chalaquí. Down on these coastal lines are your Gullah Geechee areas, and these are all the people that the Spanish were dealing with. From Lady Kofatikwe all the way to the Chalaquí Cherokee era. And Jatara is right there. Ja'ara is right there. So when they were saying to conquer land, they was talking about moving inland to conquer. And when those folks invited them inland to conquer, you heard what they say they did to them, right?
And it's important, TB. We want people to understand when we ask you, what did they do to them? Smack their ass. Understand this. This is important too, because the version of history they want to give you, they want to make sure that they make it seem like your people is docile. That you was sitting on the plantation getting beat up, talking about we should overcome, and we was warriors. Organized warriors in kingdoms, in civilization, high complex societies. So this is important when understanding it wasn't no just rolling up on us and our ancestors and they just rolled up and we just got here overnight. This is a continual process, again, lasting 400 years, 530 something years at this point for us to get in this process. When you look and see what's going on in the ghettos and the hoods every day, we're talking about over a process of 500 years that these people been pushing in. So again, in the 1500s, like he's showing you, the book we talk about, Conquest of the Floridas, when they came to the coast of South Carolina, Florida, that was what they call Florida as well. Peace and light, Rashad, brother.
Peace, bro. So as y'all can see, the Guale Indians, then you got the Escamosco Oristas. Those are your original Gullah Island people, bro. Then you got your Calusas, you got your Edistos, your Seaweeds. All of these people, your Casabas, all of these people are part of the Gullah Geechee corridor areas, and these are the Indians that were being snatched. And these were the Indians that united with the British to fight the Spanish, but were friends with the Spanish and were fighting the British and the French first. So a lot of the times when y'all start seeing, oh, these people are divided amongst a certain area, it's because of who people decided they was going to fight with. See, we had the numbers to fight. It was the colonizers that did. So I want y'all to think about that part.
Facts. And I also want to go back to understand we had the numbers, but we also was organized too. So it's important to understand that, because what has been done before can be done again. So my thing is to understand we had a society, social complex societies. We had high priests, we had kings, we had generals, we had warriors, we had a navy, we had an army. We had everything that you need to be successful in a society and culture. Actually, when you get deeper into the ancient antiquity of the Americas, not only did we have these things, a lot of other societies are mirrored off what we had over here when you talking about a high complex society, because we went around teaching other people this, because we was the first seafarers. So they understand it. In this first 5 chapters that we've been in, these first 4 chapters, they telling you they come over the conquest of land. Not coming to discover. They're going to ask the king every time, like, hey, can I get permission to run up on these people again? And they keep getting smacked. They've been getting smacked since 1519, since they started trying to conquer what they call Florida or the United States. It wasn't the United States. They called it Florida. But it was a conglomerate of kingdoms. Of course, we called it Tamiri over here, but they called it Florida when they got here. And we talking about the whole, pretty much, USA. But we're going to finish up this last chapter right here. I think this chapter 3, talking about people who tried to conquer Florida. And it's getting to Hernando de Soto, who the book is really based around. So I'm going to read that part, and then we're going to stop again. Then we're going to go into chapter 4, religion and customs of the people of Florida. So right here, it says again, Hernando de Soto undertook to invade Florida. He arrived there in 1539. But finally, he lost his fortune and his life there. His death being known in Spain, many asked the government of Florida and permission to continue the discovery of it. But Charles V wouldn't listen to no one upon the subject, because they kept getting their ass whooped. The king said, I don't want to listen to nobody else about conquering Florida. However, in 1549, he sent their Castle Balbastro, a Dominican monk, as a superior of those of his order, who should go to preach the gospel to the inhabitants of Florida. This father arrived in these countries, began to chastise the natives. Remember, what is called the Inquisition. So they send a monk over here to do the Inquisition and chastise the people to get them prepped so they can conquer the land. The father arrived in these countries, began to chastise the natives, but instead of listening to him, the Indians, who remembered the injuries they had received from the Spaniards, slew him and two of his companions. Does these sound like docile people? Hit the Y if you yes or no. So far, we didn't talk about all these conquerors in chapter 3, all these conquerors running up on the Indians. If they sound docile to you, hit the Y. If they don't sound docile to you, hit the N. Let me see a yes or a no, because they every time somebody come to give them these indigenous people some type of lesson, they're slaying them. Let me read that to y'all again. What it said. This father arrived in these countries, again Florida, began to chastise the natives. But instead of listening to him, the Indians, who remembered the injuries they had received from the Spaniards, slew him and two of his companions. The others, completely frightened, regained the vessels, so they ran back to the vessels and returned in a haste to Spain, and said as an excuse for their quick return that the barbarians had hardened hearts and took no pleasure in hearing the word of God. They said the Indians, so they ran these niggas back to the boats, and they went back to Spain and said, "Oh no, the Indians got hard and hearts. They don't want to hear the word of God. We're done. We're out. We're done." You know what I'm saying? 13 years afterwards, the government of Florida was promised to one of the sons of Allian if he would conquer it. But as he solicited his departure, they put off from one day to another the execution of his enterprise. He died of grief. Pedro Mendez and several others went afterwards to Florida. Nevertheless, as I have no sufficient knowledge of what they did, I should not speak of it. So basically, he's saying it was person after person after person running up on Florida, and they just could not beat Florida. You know, even Hernando de Soto, who the book is basically about, Florida the Inca, or History of the Conquest of Florida, they basically saying everybody ran up. They got beat, even Hernando de Soto. But we're going to go ahead and hop into chapter 4. TB, you want to hop in real quick, bro?
Okay, so when as they're speaking on why they can't know what Mendez, or I think it's the guy Mendez. That's the guy that brought the Frayers around and invited the Franciscans into Florida. So that's part of another form of history, because the Franciscans are the ones that brought you all of these images and imagination. All the stories of the first creations come from the Franciscans. All of the ancient images and creatures and monsters in the Bible come from the Franciscans. As in, the Franciscans literally made up some shit to manipulate and bring curiosity to the minds of us, to convert us into fear and wanting to have a God. But I think I got that in here too. Hold on. Don't worry about it. I got it. Where are you, Francesca? Here you go. I noticed a couple years ahead of bruh timeline or whatever. But this is one of the images. This is from the Drake manuscript. And this is in the Indies, basically talking about Florida. And this is what they were using. Images like this, making plays everywhere they go, putting on shows for us. What does a jester do to entertain a king? Theatrics and all of that about God. So in order for them to bring a fear into us and to get us to convert into what they wanted us to be, they had to come up with things like this, make plays, and the best way to do it was to manipulate the minds of the women and children. The men wasn't going for it. Just being honest with you. So all of the spiritual conquest of Florida was about converting the children, not the adults. At all. They didn't want the adults. I think I got the other part too. Hold on, let me see. Oh man. Here we go. So before bro continue doing what he was doing. So when y'all be wanting to know exactly what he's speaking on the Florida. And he's speaking on the Gullah Geechee corridor. And why the Gullah Geechee corridor plays an important role in Harriet Tubman's story. So what bro is basically breaking to you, and what he's finna bring to you, is why the United States wanted to erase your indigenous history. Why they skipped from 1492 all the way to 1619. Because between the French, the Spanish, and the Portuguese, all you niggas is Indians, either East Indian or West Indian. Oh, and there go your story right there, St. Helena Island, 1576, about the Spanish, the Aristas and the Escamacú. The Escamacú, the Aristas, and the Guale was still around in the 1700s. They all became Yamasee.
Okay, y'all hear that? And y'all remember we was just talking about St. Helena when they ran up on St. Helena and they got smacked. We also talked about in the book, in this last chapter, chapter 3, was talking about people who attempted to conquer Florida. Everybody who ran up got smacked. And we was just talking about St. Helena. So y'all understand. So what I'm telling y'all, and I'm reading this book, that we coming from a historical source, TB is pulling up other sources showing y'all what we saying is important and it's true and factual. This is important because, again, when we talk about the Mississippian culture, what we identify and we call Tamiri, a lot of us over here call the mound building culture Tamiri, all these different tribes that was here, we have an actual history that we talking about with the Mississippian culture. When we talk about universal law, it's something called cause and effect. For every effect, there is a cause. For every cause is effect. When you look at the poverty, you look at the crime, you look at everything that's going on in our communities, we talking about colonization. Y'all get stuck in racism. Y'all stay in racism. You let people manipulate you, and you can't get out the box because they had created the box called racism. So in the box of racism, you can never figure out what's really the problem with the people because you're not talking about colonization. So we have to stay on the thing of colonization with this conversation. So TB, you want to hop anything else before I hop into chapter 4?
Yeah, I wanted to go back to where you was at when you went to talking about taking the children from St. Helena. The gold and silver mines of Peru and Mexico back to Spain. They had to follow the Gulf and take it back to St. Helena to catch the western line across the Atlantic. So the point happened to be at some St. Helena Island. From across the Atlantic, they can go back to Europe, not Africa. Straight back to Lisbon and Seville, across the Atlantic in the western line. So when people think you can't cross the Atlantic, there is a particular time of year that you can cross the Atlantic. So I'm finna show y'all again exactly who they was dealing with when they was going up into those areas. One more time, y'all, because chapter 4 finna be very important. Make sure I got this right. Okay. I think I got it right. Here we go. So, as you can see, right, 1576, St. Helena faced one of the greatest challenges when it was raided by local Native American tribes, discriminating the volatile nature of colonial alliances. The Native Arista, Guale, and Escamacú tribes facing increasing demands and conflicts with the Spanish, united to drive them out from St. Helena. The concerted attack resulted in temporary abandonment of the settlement by the Spanish, still fearing the French returning to control the sound. The Spanish rebuilt once more the following year, doubling down on St. Helena. Strategic importance. This is until final abandonment just over a decade later in 1587 as Spain consolidated. So every time that he keep telling y'all they've been getting whooped since the early 1500s. Early 1500s, they've been whooping them people.
And building on what TB saying, with that, understand why they're not telling that story. Is it better to tell a story in the narrative of when you're docile? Why would I, if I control the history, I'd have conquered you. Why would I come tell you a narrative how you was whooping my ass when I finally got on top of you? They're not going to do it, people.
Right on. So, only thing, bro, is breaking to y'all is, man, the spiritual conquest of the people. And pretty soon, by the time he get to chapter 6, y'all probably gonna be in tears. Y'all gonna be upset. You heard me? But just keep listening, because it's all good, bro. I mean, it's all good. This is your real history. Anybody that's Gullah Geechee, this is your real history. not the African story. Find your ancestors.
Facts. And now we're going to go ahead and hop into chapter 4. And the name of chapter 4 is Religious and Customs of the People of Florida. Chapter 4. Again, anybody on YouTube, if you want to see what's going on and what we got on the screen, it is going to be on YouTube. So we're going to have the live version on YouTube. Then I'm going to have an edited version. And then you're going to see that too. So it can be more condensed down on YouTube. But right now we live on YouTube if you want to see what we're reading. And any of the screen stuff too. If you want to stay over here, that's fine. TB going to be showing y'all screenshots. So we're going to go ahead and cook over here too. So, again, chapter 4. Religion and Customs of the People of Florida. The people of Florida are idolaters. Remember, dodge the trickology. That's trickology right there. We was in tune with the one true creator, and that's the creator of the sun, the moon, and the stars. All that go back to God. The whole universe go back to God in our mindset. But that's what they're going to tell to conquer the land. Again, the first line say, chapter 4, the people of Florida are idolaters and have the sun and moon for divinities. What I just tell y'all, which they adore without offering them either prayer or sacrifices. However, they have temples, but they make use of them only to enter those who die and to shut up their treasures. They erect also at the entrance of these temples in the form of a trophy the spoils of their enemies. The Indians espouse ordinarily but one wife, who is obliged to remain faithful to her husband, under penalty of being punished with a shameful chastisement, or sometimes with a cruel death. But by privilege of the country, the great have permission to have as many wives as they please. However, they have but one legitimate wife. The others are but as concubines. Still like today, people have one girl, but they have a whole bunch of other chicks they messing with. You know. But if you ain't married, you can do whatever you want to do. Women too. So when you read about the Mississippian culture, you're going to read more into that. Women, if you're not married, you do what you want to do. Also, when they got over here, they were surprised because they had a concept of divorce. If you was with somebody you ain't want to be with them no more, you don't have to stay with them. Over in the Mississippian culture. That's telling you again, a complex social society. Not just a simple society, try hunters and gatherers. We talking about a complex social society. I'm going to read it again. By a privilege of the country, the great have permission to have as many wives as they please. However, they have but one legitimate wife. The others are but as concubines, so that the children that spring from these last do not share equally the estate of the father with the children of his wife. The custom is also preserved in Peru. So the thing about the concubines and everything, same thing going on in Peru, which is another part of America. For except the Incas and the caciques, or the kings, who in quality of princes and lords have as many wives as they desire, or as they can support, it is not permitted to the others to have more than one. So the difference between the Mississippians and the Peruvians, the Mississippians, anybody can have more than one wife. Or you can just be monogamous, or you can be polygamous, just like a lot of us are today. Some people prefer just having one girl. Some people have many women. And even if they lie to the one girl in today's time, they still have a desire to have many women. Some brothers have a desire just to have one. You know, they don't want to deal with Brenda, Sarah, all them different attitudes. Hell, you got, excuse my ladies, but you know, sometimes you can have 7 attitudes in one woman right there. But, hey, at the end of the day, in Peru, it only was reserved to the kings could do it in Peru. But in the Mississippian culture, Tamari up here, La Florida, everybody could do it. Let's finish reading. This is about Peru again. The persons of rank say they are obliged to fight. So the people who of rank say they have to fight. And that is necessary that they should have many wives in order to leave many children who may share their labors. That the greater part of the nobles dying in battles, it is necessary that they should have a great number of them. And that as the multitude have no share in public affairs, are not exposed to perils, there are always enough people to labor and bear expenses of the government. So the people in Peru say, hey, a man can have many wives because they want to keep people going into the government and keep the society going. To return to the inhabitants of Florida, they have no cattle and support no flock. They eat instead of bread, corn, and instead of meat, fish, and vegetables. Listen to this part, y'all. Hit the number 1 if you all follow me, because we're going to go to some deep shit right here. We're going to go. We finna go to some deep shit right here. Well, I'm finna tell y'all right here. Hit the number one. I'm finna tell y'all. Listen to this. Who does this sound like? This whole paragraph right here. Let me see. All right. To return to the inhabitants of Florida, they have no cattle and support no flocks. They instead of bread, corn, and instead of meat, fish and vegetables. However, as they are accustomed to hunt, they often have game, for they kill with their arrows, harts, roebucks, and deer, which they have in abundance and larger than those of Spain. They also catch many kinds of birds, which they eat, and which they plumage of different colors serve them to deck their heads, and to distinguish during peace and noble from the people, and during war the soldiers from those who do not bear arms. This is the part I want y'all to listen to right here. They drink only water. They eat their meat well cooked, their fruit nearly ripe, their fish well roasted, and ridicule the Spaniards who use them otherwise. What did I just say? How did the Indians eat their meat? They eat their meat well cooked.
And judge the Spaniards for doing otherwise.
And judge the Spanish for doing otherwise. Hit the number 2 if y'all caught that.
Still today. We like that
Still today.
If you don't cook that, bro, put some seasoning up.
What you know, people don't go to a steakhouse. You know they send it back real quick. I ain't gonna lie, they done got me. I order a medium well now. I used to only be well done. I do a medium well, but I just got that when I was a grown man to do medium well. But most people, our people, are going to say well done, burn it up. You know. So I'm gonna read that for you all again. They drink only water. They eat their meat well cooked, their fruit nearly ripe, their fish well roasted, and ridicule the Spaniards who use them otherwise. Listen to this part. I want everybody to listen to this real good, this next line. This is what the writer is saying. He said, so I cannot give faith to those who report that these people eat human flesh. At least, I dare say that it has not happened in the provinces which Soto discovered, and that on the contrary, they have an extreme horror of this humanity. For some Spaniards resided in a quarter where they died of hunger, and their companions eating them as they expired. Y'all hear this? The Spaniards was doing what? As they was hungry, they were eating their companions as they expired. They was but the last who escaped it, at which the Indians were so offended that they wished to go and slay the Spaniards who were in another place. Let me read that paragraph for y'all one more time. They drink only water. They eat their meat well cooked, their fruit nearly ripe, their fish well roasted, and ridicules the Spaniards who use them otherwise. So I cannot give faith to those who report that these people eat human flesh. So all these books that saying we was eating human flesh and the Indians ate people, he's saying I can't give that report. I cannot verify that. He said he can't verify it because of this. At least I dare to say that it has not happened in the provinces where Soto discovered, where Hernando de Soto went. He said it ain't happened there, and that on the very opposite, on the very contrary, the Indians have a very extreme horror of this inhumanity to eat a people. The Indians ain't with that. For some Spaniards resided in a quarter where they have died of hunger, and their companions eating them as they expired. And I've seen this in many books that the Spanish will eat each other when they get hungry. They were but the last who escaped it, and which the Indians were so offended that they wished to go and slay the Spaniards who were in another space. So the Indians wanted to unalive these people because they was eating other people. They was eating unalived people, and the Indians wanted to do them real quick, get them out of here. It was a big inhumanity for them. All right, let's read it a little more. The people of Florida go almost naked. There were only a kind of chamos or buckskin drawers. These drawers are of diverse colors and serve to cover what decency requires them to conceal. Their cloak is a kind of cover which hangs from the neck to the middle of the leg. It is ordinarily of fine marten skins and smell of a very agreeable musk odor. They sometimes have them also of cats, deers, stags, bears, lions, and even of cow skins, which they prepare so well that they can use it as a cloth. And as for their hair, they wear it long and tied on their heads. Their cap is of a colored network which they attach to their forehead in such a manner that the ends hang as far as below the ears. Their women are also clothed with the skins of deer or roebucks, and all have their body covered in a decent and modest manner. The Indians make use of all sorts of arms except the crossbow and musket. They believe that the bow and arrow give them a particular grace, and for that reason they always carry them to chase and to war. But as they have a very convenient height, their bows are very long and large in proportion. They are of oak ordinarily, or some other wood of this sort. It is for this reason that they are difficult to bend, and there is no spanner who can draw the cord to his face, whereas the Indian draw it even behind the ear and make astonishing allots. The cord of their bows is of the skin of the stag, and this is how they make it. From the skin of the stag they cut from the tail to the head a thong 2 fingers in breadth. They take the hair from this thong, soak it, twist it, and attach one end to the branch of a tree and the other to a weight of 100 or 120 pounds, and leave the skin until it becomes in the form of a large catgut. Finally, in order not to wound the left arm with the cord which it discharges, they make use of a half armlet of large feathers, which covers it from the wrist to the elbow, and which is secured with a leather strap, which they make several turn around the arms, and thus they discharge the cord with a force altogether remarkable. And this is the last paragraph of chapter 4. We're going to stop here because it's almost 11. But we're going to finish on Thursday, everybody. So anybody want to tap back into the book, we're going to finish the book on, well, not finish the book. We're going to tap back into chapter 5 on Thursday at 9 p.m. So we're going to finish. This book is 602 pages. And we're going to read all 602 pages of this book. And this is going to be on YouTube as well. So I'm going to cut this one up that we're going through right now. But we got the live one on YouTube as well. And we're going to have snippets on TikTok. So this is what we're going to be going on Tuesdays and Thursdays when we really get down to teaching. Any other day you see me live, we just really building. We might just be coming with something else. You know what I'm saying? But on the Tuesday and Thursday lives, when we building a foundation, we hopping in this book for our first book. And our first lesson, getting into the foundation of the Mississippi culture. Understanding this is actual, factual history. This is not a pipe dream. This is not nothing nobody making up. This is actual history. An actual empire was here. Actual kingdoms they was conquering. Actual wars. You don't have to go look in roots. You don't have to go watch Shaka Zulu. You can read the history and tap into with your imagination what was going on at this time. So again, let me read this last paragraph for you. Those in brief are the customs of the inhabitants of Florida. But as I have spoken also concisely of those who discovered it, and of the enterprise of Soto upon this country is more illustrious than that of the others. So he basically saying this book, basically the Soto journey was very more illustrious, or was more entertaining. It had more stuff going on. So the book is about DeSoto. These first 3 chapters, he just wanted to tell you about the Indians. He also wanted to tell you about the people who tried to conquer Florida, and kind of just tell you about Florida. Again, let's show the map. The whole southeast United States, or the whole United States up to the Chesapeake Bay, up to the Great Lakes. They call it Florida. He just wanted to pretty much show you. TB got it on the screen. Appreciate you, bro. Showing you La Florida. This whole area, which was the United States was called before that. Before they called it the United States. They called it La Florida when they got here. So, this last little line, let's finish reading it. Again, those in brief are the customs of the inhabitants of Florida, but as I have spoken also concisely of those who discovered it, as the enterprise of Soto upon this country is more illustrious than that of the others. I shall now relate at more length the things which he did in these countries. So, chapter 5 and 4, we're going to talk about DeSoto, what he did in this country. I shall describe the provinces which he discovered there, Remember, if he's saying provinces he discovered in Florida, that's telling you what we keep telling you, TB telling you, I'm telling you. Florida, what was they calling this whole land? We call it Mississippian. What we call Tamiri, they were calling Florida. Even going over to Mexico, going over past to Texas, they was calling all this Florida. Up to the East Coast, Chesapeake Bay, all this Florida.
Hey, I gotta find out which book is in, but it might be in this book that you're reading. They get the name Florida from the Mexican Indian Miguel, who made them the first map of America. So the first map y'all see of America was actually made by a little kid named Miguel in 1513. And he wrote Florida on that map, not the Mexicans, not the Spanish.
1 second, T. I'm gonna let you hop back in. At 9 p.m. 9 p.m. on Thursday, everybody. So Tuesdays and Thursdays, like today, we went live at 9 p.m. We gonna go Thursday at 9 p.m. too. Again, a repost of this video is gonna be on YouTube. We're gonna have an edited version, then the live version going on right now. So if you want to go see back what we talked about today, you kind of missed what we was talking about, you go to my YouTube, Imhotep the Great. The live version gonna be up. And then also throughout the next couple days, I'm gonna edit it. I'm gonna put the edited version on YouTube. I'm gonna have the TB parts in here too. And then we also gonna put some of the clips over here on TikTok. But every Tuesday and Thursday at 9 p.m., that's when we go live, and that's when we building a foundation. That means we teaching, and we going to leave off on where we left off. So even on Thursday, when we go live at 9 p.m., next Tuesday, we'll leave off. We're going to pick on where we left off on Thursday at 9 p.m. So we're going to Tuesday and Thursday. But we'll be live throughout the week. But Tuesday and Thursday, we're going to stay on this topic about the Mississippian and building from there. Y'all got me? So Thursday, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And last sentence, so I'm going to just read it for y'all again so everybody can get it. Then we're going to close out the book. I'm going to end a live over on YouTube. We're going to stay on TikTok right now. Those in brief are the customs of the inhabitants of Florida. But I have spoken also concisely of those who discovered it. At the enterprise of Soto upon this country is more illustrious than that of others. I shall not relate at more length the things which he did in these countries. I shall describe the provinces which he discovered there, and tell the deeds of his soldiers to the time they left Florida and retired to Mexico. All right, so we got that. Let me go ahead and shut this down over on YouTube, everybody. All right, let's do that. Stop streaming. We cool.